Hello and welcome to this SAP Business One training webinar on inventory management. My name is Ketan Solanki, and for the next hour we'll be going through the following topics. So we'll have a look at some of the configuration relating to inventory management, then go through the item master data, costings, multi-units of measures, bin management, serial number and batch number tracking, the pick and pack process, stock takes, and then finally there'll be an opportunity for some questions and answers. This is going to be a pretty jam-packed session. We're going to be taking at least an hour to go through the topics here today. So let's start. So the first topic we've got is the setup or the configuration side of things. So let's go into administration, system initialization, general settings, and then look at the stock data tab, the stock tab, and then items. So these are some of the general or overall settings in relation to item and inventory management. The first one here is the management method on serials and batch numbers. So just bear in mind, this particular one is a default setting. So when you create an item, that's what it will default to, but you can overwrite it on an item level. So the options are we want to track serial and batches on every transaction, or we wish to only do it on release only. The difference being if it's on release only, then the system will not force you to provide a serial or batch on inbound transactions, only on outbound. Whereas on every transaction, you have to specify the serial number. Issue primarily by. This setting is only relevant if you're doing bin management. And again, it's only this is a default and can be overridden on the actual item master. So your options are you issue it by serial batch number or by bin location. And depending on which of these you've got, there's a slight difference in functionality when you're allocating stock, which is batch or serialized and is in a bin controlled location. Unique serial numbers by. So if you are turning on serial number tracking, then you know what is the uniqueness, which of the serial number fields are unique. So the options here are none, which means that you are not doing any strict serial number control. You could receive the same serial number for the product multiple times and have it in stock. You can use the manufacturer's serial number, your internal serial number, or the lot number. Now, most people would use an internal serial number. Manufacturer's serial number could also be appropriate. Auto-create custom equipment card. So this is related to the service module in SAP. So if you had serial tracking turned on and check this box, when you sell a serial tracked item, it will automatically create a equipment card relating to that, and then you can create service calls against it. We won't be focusing too much on the service side of things, but it's just good to know that this functionality is available. Next setting is in relation to batches. So you've got, when you are receiving a batch number in, what should the status of that batch be? And the options are release, not accessible, or lot. A release means that you can perform any type of transaction on that item or batch. Not accessible or locked means that there's a restriction on outbound transactions, so you could not release it out of the system. Default warehouse. So if you are entering a transaction, what is the warehouse that should be defaulted to? This is again an overall one, but there is a hierarchy. So you can also set up defaults against individual users, and then also at the item level you can define the default, and so it will first look at the item, then the user, then finally, if neither of those are there, then this set stock by. So this GL setup, you can either have the GL by warehouse, by item group, or item level. Again, a default setting can be overwritten on the item. Auto add all warehouses to new and existing items. So when you are creating a new item, do you want all the warehouses that exist in the system to be automatically mapped to that item? If so, then you check this box. If you don't want the auto add, then untick this box, and then when you create an item, you'll have to go in and manually add or map the warehouses that are relevant to that item. Check box to turn on withholding tax. Then you've got these two settings in relation to multi-units of measures. So if you have these ticked when you create an item, then these unit of measures that are applicable automatically added to those items, and if you don't have them ticked, then you have to manually go in and specify them. The final setting here is relating to whether you wish to display inactive items or not, and the options are on reports. So when you are running a, say for example, a sales analysis report, do you want the inactive items to be available to be selected and reported? And then the other setting is in relation to marketing documents, sales and purchasing documents, whether the user should have the option to select an inactive item. Okay, so that covers the setup part. Now let's have a look at the item master data. So under stock management and item master, and we'll just have a run through all the different fields and options that are available in relation to an item. So firstly, you have an item code, and since 9.1 version, the item code, 9.2 version, the item code can be now 50 characters. Previously, the limit was 20 characters. For those who are not aware, you can also have a numbering sequence relating to items. So if I go create a new item, I could have defined a numbering sequence, and I can have multiple numbering sequences here, and I can select that, and it will just pick up the next number for me. So that might be useful if you've got, if you're assigning your own internal numbers to products, and you just want the system to generate the next number for you. Okay, back to the item we were looking at earlier. So you've got a description. You can also have an alternate description for a name. The item type. So the options on an item type is items, labor, or travel. And the difference between the three is that if you select labor or travel, then the item by default cannot be a stocked item or a purchased item. So you see here the checkboxes here have turned gray, the stock item and the purchase item. The same applies on labor. So that's the only difference. And you'd probably use labor or travel if you had consumables or things that you didn't want to stock track, then you'd use the option. But back to just normal items. So let's have a look at these checkboxes one more time. So if you do not tick stock item checkbox, then the system does not track any quantities for this item. You can buy the item, you can possibly sell the item, but on purchase it's just straight into expense, doesn't go into inventory, and there are no quantities being tracked. Sales item, so if you do not have this box ticked, then this item will not appear in any sales-related documents. So you cannot put it on a sales order and an invoice. And so likewise, the purchasing checkbox relating to the purchasing documents. The item group, so this is a method for you to, or means for you to categorize the inventory in the system into logical groups. So these are all user definable. But you can also use these groupings to do GL mapping, so that when you sell a particular item group, it goes to a certain revenue account or into a certain inventory account, cost of sales account. You also can use the item groups for discounting. So there's a discount group functionality around pricing, and if you could assign percentage discounts based on item groups. Unit of measure group. So this is again a new feature since 9.1 where you could do multi-units of measures. The default when you create an item is manual, which means there's no multi-units of measures in play. And but if you do have an item where there's true multi-units of measure, you can assign it a unit of measure group and then track the stock. Or rather do purchasing and sales using the multi-units of measures. So let's have a look at an item that has been set up for multi-unit of measure. So I've got this item, which is alcoholic drinks. It's linked to a unit of measure group called alcohol. And if I drill into this into the unit of measure group, I can see that the base unit of measure for this item is a can, but I have other units of measures that I've defined and a conversion factor between the alternate unit of measure and the base unit. So, example being a carton is 24 cans or a case is 240 cans. Now, all the alternate unit of measures and base unit of measures need to be predefined. So there's a table where you can go in and create all the units of measures that you have, and you can also put in, dimensional information, weight information regarding that unit of measure as such. Now, you can have multiple units of measure groups, and each unit of measure group can have its own units of measures and alternate quantities. And that setup is done through administration, setup, stock management, unit of measure group. So I've got several here, and from here I can drill in and go into the group definition and see what it's made up of. So once you've selected an item for unit of measure group or multi-unit of measure, then you get some additional options. So firstly, you can then define barcodes for different units of measures. So I've got a can which has a barcode that starts with a 9. I've got a carton where the barcode starts with a 2, and so on. So these can all be defined, and then if you had a warehouse management system, then you'd be able to scan different barcodes and it would recognize the pack sizes. But what you can also do is have different pricing based on unit of measure groups or pack sizes. So here, if I go into the pricing, I can see that a can is $5, but a carton is not 24 by 5, but rather I've got a 20% discount on it. Okay, so what you also got then is the purchasing data tab and the sales data tab that has additional options. You have a unit of measure code, which is the default unit of measure, but you can go in and you can select any of the pack sizes that have been defined as your default purchasing unit, but you can also go in and look at the various pack sizes and the dimensional information and so on. So same applies on the sales side as well. You can have a sales unit of measure and then all the other possible selling units that are applicable. And finally, you'll also notice that if you have got a multi-unit of measure turned on an item, then the stock counting, you can have a different stock counting unit of measure versus what your stock keeping unit of measure is. So, example here is that even though I track my quantities in cartons. I want to do my I track my quantities in cans, but I wish to do my stock taking in cartons. Okay, so let's move back into and look at some other settings now, unrelated to multi-units of measures. So you can maintain or manage all your pricing through the item master data. You just got to pick price list, and then you can update this price here in the field. And even for if you haven't got multi-units of measures turned on, you can still have multiple barcodes defined for an item. Okay, now let's have a look at the general data tab on the item. So we've got the manufacturer. So the manufacturer, not necessarily the supplier, because you could be purchasing an item that has multiple suppliers can provide you, and they're all buying it from the same manufacturer. So that's why there's a manufacturer's field. You can also use the manufacturer for discounting within the discount groups area. You've got an additional identifier. You can specify the default shipping type. And if the item is serial or batch tracked, then you can also select the options for those. So if I go now into a serialized or serial tracked item, you can see it's managed by serial numbers. And in this case, I've got it on every transaction, and I've got the issue primary by. So all these settings were available in the initial screen I showed in the setup area, and but you can override these item by item. And so if I look at a batch controlled item, then I've got by batch, and again the same options available. So back to my item that's not serial or batch tracked, you can also make an item inactive on a particular date period. So now if you look at an item that isn't batch tracked, you can also see, or isn't multi-units of measures, you can also see that you have the ability to create a purchasing unit of measure and a selling unit of measure, and they can be different, but what you can't have is multi-units of measures. So here, this item, I've got purchasing unit of measure is carton, and in this case it's all freeform. I'm not restricted to a list, and I can say that, well, in a carton I've got 200 labels in this case. And I can also say that, the packaging unit of measure is a pallet, and we have 10 cartons in a pallet. You can define the duty. So if you're importing an item, then you can say, well, the expected or the normal percentage duty on this item, and you can have a list and you can specify what the normal percentage is, so that when you do the landed cost, the system will calculate the duty for you, or the expected duty for you. GST code, so here you can define whether the item has GST or is GST free. You've got the weights dimensional information as well. Most of these settings also apply on the sell side. Just coming back to the purchasing data, so you can also define the preferred supplier, but if you went in through that box, you can also have other alternative suppliers stored against the item. So sales data has the same concept, sales unit of measure and a packaging unit of measure, and the GST and dimensions. Looking at the stock data now a bit closer, so you can have your GL settings, how the item maps to the general ledger, the stock keeping unit of measure, the weight for a single unit, and the valuation method. So this here you can define how you want to cost the item in the system. So if you look at the available options, these are moving average, standard, or first in, first out. So, moving average is weighted average. Standard means, you've defined a standard cost, and, then the system would be doing variances when you buy, and the price is different from the standard. First in, first out means that the system will maintain layers of the costs. So, as you receive the stock, it will maintain the cost per receipt, and then as you sell, then it will take the stock from the oldest FIFO layer. You can also manage the stock by warehouse, which means that you can define minimum and maximum stock levels at the warehouse level. Or if you choose not to do that, then the definition of mins and maxes then moves up to the item level. So coming back to our item here, we can see all the different warehouses. I can see stock in different locations, plus what's the committed quantity and what's on purchase orders. If it's a bin-controlled warehouse, I can also see the first bin location where the stock is, and I can drill into that and see all the bin locations where the stock is. So going into planning data, this is all relating to MRP. Production data, all relating to manufacturing. I'm not going to cover too much detail on these two tabs because we've previously done webinars relating to both. So if you haven't seen those webinars, you can send an email to Amanda and she can send you the link for those. The next tab is properties. So this is basically another method of categorizing your items inventory, and it's basically your attributes relating to products, and you can check multiple ones, and then use the same attributes in reporting. You've got your remarks tab, where you can put in some additional description regarding the product. You can put in the image of the product, and finally you've got the attachments tab, where you can put in an unlimited number of attachments, which could be images, could be product data sheets, anything relevant. Now let's have a look at bin management and that functionality. So firstly, you've got to set up your structure or hierarchy within the bins. So under administration setup, stock management, and bin locations, you've got to have defined the bin location layers or levels that you wish to activate. So you can have up to 4 levels. That's the maximum you can go to, but it's up to you how many of those you wish to activate. And you can also give each one of those levels a name. So here you've got aisle, shelf, level, and container. So once you've activated those, you can also activate bin location attributes. So the example here is, in my warehouse, I might have different zones that may be, holding stock in different temperature levels. So I might have a refrigerator, and then I might have an area where it's room temperature, and then I might have one where I've got, slightly warm climate. So you can define different attributes, and then within those attributes, you can have different multiple values per attribute. So we'll have a look at how that's done. So the next screen here, bin location attributes code. I can see here I've got the 3 things that I've activated. If I look at temperature, I can see that I've defined high, moderate, and cool. Warehouse sub-level codes. So once you've activated the levels, then you've got to then define the valid value per level. So, what aisles have you got in terms of your numbering, what shelves you've got, and so on. So once you've defined these, then you can either, you've got to activate bin management against the warehouse. So the bin management is done by warehouse. You don't have to turn on bin management on every warehouse. The way you do it is you check this box, enable bin locations. So I've got a warehouse here which has got bin management turned on. Just note, don't turn on bin management without understanding the full consequences of doing it, because there's a lot of additional settings that go into it. There's probably a bit of design thought process, and you probably would want to do it in a test system first and just make sure that you're happy with the processes before you activate it in live. But once you turn it on, what happens is any stock that was sitting in that warehouse will go automatically and sit in a default bin, which the system creates as part of enabling the bin location. So automatically anything that was there will go into a default bin, and then you've got to move it out of there. So once you've turned it on, there's an additional tab. You can define the separator codes, so what character separates the various levels within your bin code. You can also see the number of bin locations there are against this warehouse. You can click on that, and then you get a listing of all the bins that are there and the quantities within each one of those bins. And then from there you can also click into the quantity to see what items are there. So then the default bin location, so you can specify a default bin location, and then the system can use that for inbound stock. So when you're receiving items, it can automatically select that. But the only caveat there is that if you've enabled receiving bin locations, then that default bin gets overridden by the receiving bin locations. So you have got default bin locations. You can also auto-allocate, define how you wish to allocate stock on outbound transactions. So if you're running a pick list, or if you're doing a delivery, how should the system allocate the stock? And the options are single choice, which is one that you probably not use in real life too often, because the only way it will allocate stock is if the quantity that is required to be allocated is in only one bin, or the order has the total quantity of the order equals to the total quantity across all the bin locations. So if either of those scenarios are not met, the stock will not get allocated. Bin location code, so the order in which your bin locations are numbered, the allocation happens in that order. Alternate sort sequence, meaning you could, your picking path might be different from the bin location code, so you could assign an alternative sort code to every location and then use that for allocating the stock. Descending quantities, so go to the bin that has the most stock all the way to the list, which means you'll be going to less bins. Or ascending quantity, which means go to the one that has the least amount of stock and then to the one that's most, which means you're probably going through to more bins. First in, first out, so go to the bin that has the oldest stock first, or last in, first out, meaning go to the bin that has the most recent stock. You can also, as I said earlier, enable receiving bin locations, and if you turn that on, when stock is arriving inbound, then it will automatically propose a receiving bin. So the bins need to be defined as a receiving bin, and then this is the order in which the allocation will happen, either in the bin location code order or the alternate sort sequence. You can also restrict the receiving to empty bins only. So if you have a receiving bay and let's say you've got 5 sort of pallet locations there, you can force it to say, well, just when the stock arrives, propose the location that doesn't have any existing stock. You can also restrict the receiving to maximum stock maximum quantity or combination, or whichever one arrives first. So also on the auto allocation on receipt, you can also do it by the following options. So if you've defined a default bin location, you can use that. This last bin the item was receipted into, the item's current bin, or current or historical. And again, you've got some options here around a restriction on receiving. Okay, so we've now looked at some of the settings. Let's just have a quick look at the selection of bins on outbound and inbound transactions for bin managed warehouse. So I'm going to go into which receipt. I'll do a purchase order first. Pick a supplier, pick a product, and select a bin controlled warehouse, and add. And then I can copy that to a goods receipt PO, and then from here I can see if I try to add this, it's going to ask me to allocate the bins. I can go in and I can say, well, just allocate it to the last location the item was receipted into, and then I can either type the quantity in, or I can say allocate the remaining stock. I could even allocate the stock to multiple bins. So I do that, and then I add that transaction away. So that's on the receiving side, and then likewise on the sales side, if I go into a delivery docket, now the pick and pack process will allocate the stock for you, but if you were just going to do an ad hoc delivery against a bin controlled warehouse, systems also allocated here as well for us, and it's done it on the basis of whatever was defined on the warehouse. If you look at the warehouse definition says auto allocate on bin location code order, so it's gone in and done it by that. And depending on how much stock is available, it will pick a second bin if necessary. So that's bin locations and process relating to that. Now we're going to have a look at batches and serial tracking. And so firstly, I'm going to go and look at a serial tracked item. So this item, as we saw earlier, serial tracked. I can right-click here and see serial numbers transaction report. And this shows me all the serial numbers that have gone through the system for this particular item. There's a column here that tells us whether that item's now available or not. You can double-click on that column and sort by items that are available. And as you click on each line, you can see the history of transactions, the movements. So the item was receipted at a point, and then it was transferred out of one location into another, and then it was moved between bins. So you get a bit of a history of the item or the serial, and you can also go into the serial number itself by drilling into it and see the details of the serial number. So that same concept also applies for any batch tracked items. So if I look at this one here and look at the batch number transactions report, again I can see all the batch numbers in the system. In this case, I've got a checkbox at the bottom that says only show me items that are in stock, or show me everything. I can see all the different statuses as well, what statuses of the various batch numbers are. And again, I can drill into the batch number, see the status. I can then change the status of the batch as well. And then also look at the quantities whereabouts, it might be that this batch is in multiple locations. Okay, so let's now create a goods receipt for a serial tracked item which has been set up to track serial on every transaction. And then we'll do a goods receipt PO for an item that's set up for on release only. Okay, so firstly, one that's on every transaction. So I'm receiving one of these, and when I click add, automatically the serial number screen comes up, and I can type in a serial number, update, and add it away. Now if I did the same on an item that's serial tracked but is set up for on release only, which is this one here, just a quick look at the setup. This item here, rainbow laser printers, management method is on release only. And if I add this one, the system doesn't ask me at all for the serial number because this item is on release only. However, let's have a look at what happens when we do a delivery then. So pick the delivery, pick a customer, and let's first look at one that's on every transaction. And let's say I want to ship 2 of these. I click on add, and I can't go any further because I have not specified the serial numbers. Now this screen here lists all the serial numbers that are available and haven't been allocated to another order, because you can allocate serial numbers and batch numbers on a sales order. So what you can do is if you had a barcode of the serial number, and if you had a scanner, Bluetooth or USB, you could scan the serial number into this field. So I'm just going to simulate that by typing the number. So, and oops, sorry, I need to be on the serial number column. Okay, let's try again. A6000332. So it's highlighted that one, and if I scan another one, it highlights the second one as well. So I can keep scanning and it can keep highlighting the ones that I've scanned, and then I can push them across, update, and add the delivery. So that was for an item that's on every transaction. Now if I look at one that's on release only, so if I click on add, so there aren't any serial numbers because we did not specify any on the inbound. But what I can do here now is right-click and do the serial numbers completion now. Now the serial number completion process can be done through the menu system as well, under stock management, item management, serial numbers, and serial number management. You can go through that way. But if you're on a particular item and you're trying to release it, you can just go right-click serial number management. It comes up with the serial numbers selected, or the product that you're looking at selected, and then it shows you the goods receipts that are in the system where the serial number hasn't been specified. And then you can go in and pick one of those, enter serial number in, and then that serial number then pops here, available to be selected, and then you can add the delivery. So this is a scenario where you're doing it on release only. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the Pick and Pack Manager. So the Pick and Pack Manager in SAP allows you to automate the processing of orders, reserve invoices, production orders, and stock transfer requests in a orderly or planned manner. This allows you to create a pick list. It initially allows you to view all the orders and available stock, allows you to release the stock, which becomes a pick list. You then pick the items off the pick list and then convert that into a delivery. So pick and pack is available through stock management, pick and pack manager. And you can either view the orders line by line, so one line per sales order, or you could see one line per document. So if you have a quick look at that, the group by, if it's none, then you get one line per product, or if you go group by document, then you end up with one line per order, but you can still click on the expand button and see all the orders. Okay. So coming back to this, now just bear in mind that if you are grouping by document, then you do not have the warehouse filter. You cannot select by warehouse, but if you are grouping by none, then you can see and filter and release only orders for a particular warehouse. So you've got a whole heap of options here. You can select what type of document you wish to be considering in the process. You can do filters, various filters, including filtering based on UDFs. One of the nice ones here is the fulfillment percentage. So you can say to the system, just show me items that I can actually fulfill. I'm not interested in looking at orders that cannot be fulfilled. So you could do that as well. So let's firstly look at releasing of an order in a warehouse that's not batch controlled. So there's a slight difference in the process depending on whether it's batch controlled or not. Sorry, bin controlled or not. So firstly, we're going to look at items where it isn't bin controlled. So here we go. I've got a bunch of orders. I can also see the fulfillment percentage of these orders. And the nice thing is you can also go into form settings and add any UDFs as well onto the screen. So all the UDFs that are on that sales document will be available to be viewed here as well. So you can then from here select the orders you wish to release for picking. Now I've got a mix of normal items, and I've also got some that are serial tracked. I can see that the orders I've selected can be released 100%. There's enough stock for all of them. And if I click on the release to pick list, then I can go through a pick list generation process, or I could just create a delivery from here if I just wanted to skip the whole picking process and just use this screen to see what orders could be shipped. I'm going to go through the full pick process. So I go release to pick list. I go next. Now I've got some options here. I can say I wish to split the pick list by customer, by document type, by document, which means one pick list per order, split it by item group, split it by product, split it by warehouse. So you've got a number of options. I'm going to split it by document and go next. And this is just giving me a preview that the system is going to create 3 pick lists, 69, 70, and 71. So if I click on generate, so those orders now have disappeared from this screen and they're now sitting in the released tab. Okay, 69, 70, and 71. I can go into 69. So the pick list once created, you can print it and give it to the picker for picking. So, and once they've completed the picking, they can say, we've picked it, and then you can go in and create a delivery for that order. All right. What also happens is once you've marked the order as, or the pick list as picked, that particular pick number then appears in the picked tab. So if there was a separate person doing the packing, then they would come in and then pick up the picked orders and then deliver them and then do the packing on the delivery screen. So let's now just look at a serial tracked item. So when you go when you look at that, and you can go pick all and create delivery. And again, you need to specify the serial number. Or if it was on release only, then you'd have to generate the serial number. So this is looking at orders in a non-bin managed warehouse. So now we're going to go back and look at orders against bin managed warehouse, and you'll clearly see the difference in the process. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to select a few orders that I've already created here. Some, again, batch controls or serial controls. Some are just regular items. So I go release to pick list. And the item that I had defined as primarily issued by serial or batch automatically pops up and says, hey, you've got to select what serial number is going to be allocated to the pick list. So the person who's releasing the picking can allocate the serial number that needs to be picked. So you can notice that it's only for the 6A, not for the 6, because that one is allocation by bins. So let me allocate this. I've allocated a serial number and a bin location. What have I done? Let's try this again. Release to pick list. It's a bit weird. Must have done something here. In any case, if you are set up for serial or batch allocation, then the system will force you at the serial number or the pick pack release stage. I'm not sure what's happened here, so I'm going to skip that one, and we're going to release to picking the rest of the 2 orders. So again, go through. Now you'll notice that the allocation process now is showing me some additional filters. So I can say allocate between these locations, aisles, Bs, bins, in a certain temperature controlled area. So I could split. I could have certain areas of the warehouse just considered for picking, particularly around bin management locations. And then again on the next screen where you split the pick list, I can also split by location. So if I had several pickers, I could say, well, picker 1 go and pick in this area, picker 2 go pick that area. That sort of concept. So again, I'm just going to split the pick list by document. Next, and in this case, there are 2 pick lists proposed to be generated. And once they've been generated, I can come in here. And if I look at the pick list that was in relation to the serial number tracked item, I can also see the bin location I need to pick from. And if I do a preview, so it hasn't allocated a serial number. All it said is there's stock in this serial in this bin location, go and find the best serial number for yourself. If I pick this, update, and I create the delivery, so it's allocated, and then I can confirm if that's a serial number, and if there was a different serial number selected or picked, then you go and change it here and add the delivery. Now, if I look at the other pick list, I can also see here that systems allocated the bin numbers for me. So it's telling the picker where to go, which is very useful. In a warehouse where you've got lots of bin locations, and a product can be in multiple locations. And again, you can print this pick list. It's specifying the bin location. You can pick it and complete the delivery. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time left. The last topic I want to cover is stock takes, and so let's just quickly run through that. So there has been a change in the stock take function in SAP since version 9.0. Now there are actual transactions in the system that you can go and look at in relation to stock takes. And there are two transactions. There's a stock counting transaction and then a stock posting transaction. So let's first of all look at a stock counting transaction. So you can specify a count date. You can also specify whether it's a single counter or multiple counters. And if you specify multiple counters, then you can enter counts done by multiple people on the screen. You can also say who the counter is. Now, you can go in and add the items, and you can either select the items through a selection screen. So I can say, show me, in this case, show me everything in warehouse 01, and don't show me anything that doesn't have a quantity. And if I do that, automatically the system loads up all the items in the warehouse with I can see what the on-hand quantity is. If the items got multi-units of measures and you're using a different unit of measure for the count, then you can also see that information here. So what you can also do, though, is apart from doing it, importing it through here, what you can also do is if you had an Excel sheet where you've done all your counts, you can just import that count straight into SAP from the Excel sheet. And the way you do that is through one sec, where are we? Through Excel, or rather tab delimited files. So I've got two files here, one in relation to bin controlled locations and another in relation to non-bin. So looking at this, it's simply a product code, a warehouse, and the quantity that was counted. So what I can then do is go add items. I'll just close this, grab my location. I can go add items, import items, and my file mapping is here, item code, warehouse, and counted quantity. I go find my file, stock take, no bins, and import. And the counted quantities that were in the file come through, and I can then see the variances as well. I can still overtype the differences here. So I could say, 1,000 here, and as you can see, as soon as I did that, the color on the line changed to red. So there's a setting in the system under administration, system initialization, document settings, and stock counting and you can see that highlight rows with variances greater than X percentage. So depending on the percentage defined, you'll see either a red or a black. Now, if you were creating your count sheets in SAP, so you've sort of created a count and you're not importing, then once you've done that, you can also preview the count and print it out. So here's a count sheet that you can give, and I mean this is a crystal report layout, so you could customize this. You could hide the in-warehouse quantity on count date. And so in any case, once you've done all that and you've put the counts in and update, you can then basically copy that to a stock posting. So the first step is just to put the counts in the system. The second step is to go in and confirm the variances, the dollar value of that variance, and if you're okay with it, you can add, and that will update the stock in the warehouse. So if you now look at this created a journal entry, and there's an impact to the quantities. So that's looking at doing stock counts, and it's not a bin controlled warehouse. If I now import a bin controlled count, so we saw earlier we had 2 files. You can also import serial numbers and such through this process as well. So if I look at stock take with bins, I've got item code, warehouse code, quantity counted, and bin location. I will import the data, stock take with bins, and the data's come through. I can see there's the bin location. That's the quantity that's in the bin currently. This is the quantity we've counted. That's the variance. I can add that, and then from there, I can copy to stock posting, and then if I add this, it will adjust the quantities in those bins.